All right, everybody, it's Tuesday, and this kind of trend for the week continues. Momo is in my lap, so if you see a little paw reach up or you hear me talking to somebody, it's the Momos, right, Momo? Yeah, we're cuddling. Momo's sneezy again. Yeah, which happens. Yeah, because you have chronic rhinosinusitis, right? That's right. Yeah, see, if I didn't tell you I had a cat in my lap, you'd think I was talking to my boob just there, right, Momo? Stop the foolishness. I'm sorry. Okay, so since I made the video yesterday, President Donald Trump came out and didn't blame video games outright, but in his speech about, his half-hearted, oh, this is terrible hate and all that stuff, he had to do one of his asides, but like he did with Charlottesville, and on many sides. We have to look at video games. Video games don't cause violence. People know video games don't cause violence. This makes me wonder, is this going to hurt Trump and the Republicans at large at the ballot box come 2020? Because some of you who are newer to my channel, who have started watching my content since 2016, may have missed the thing I did on the previous election, testing my two theories of politics, which is the person who can explain their campaign in the fewest words wins, and the person who can make the election all about judging their opponent wins as well. And Donald Trump did both. I mean, Make America Great Again was ostensibly his campaign slogan, but it was actually more build the wall, right? 3 little words. It's the same way Obama had 3 little words, hope and change, right? The record now is 3 words. Nobody's been able to do it in less than 3 words. And Trump, of course, made the election all about, perceived Clinton corruption and the emails and all that stuff, but her emails. And so both of my theories of politics stand to be true. Now, Trump's going to be very, very good at trying to, he's going to keep the, keep America great. He'll do that, 3 words. He can match his previous record on that. But he's going to have a much bigger challenge making it about his opponent this time around, unless the Democrats are nuts and run somebody very far left of center. That makes that easier for him to do. But there's the Momos. Hi, Momo. But barring that, it's going to be much harder because he now has a record to run on. And one of his mistakes, I think, major tactical errors, not, his deliberate stoking of racism, not all that stuff. That's all tactical. That's not an error. That's part of the plan, unfortunately. But an error he's made in this old man yells at clouds, blaming of video games. He did it after Parkland, and he did it again here. And considering his voters are overwhelmingly white and a large portion male, going after video games, is that really the smartest thing to do? Older white men, he'll continue to win because older white men are other old men yelling at clouds. But the younger cohort, those people who kind of voted for Trump as a troll vote, who I talked to some, they were younger voters and they just wanted to see the whole thing burn down. Well, that didn't work. Try as he might, Trump hasn't burned the whole system down. But also, these people play video games. I talk to them because they're gamers. And one of the big issues that people had with Hillary Clinton, an actual policy issue, was her involvement along with Senator Joe Lieberman to criminalize the sale of violent video games, M-rated games, to kids. And people found that an attack on the things they care about. And people like to think that politics is about policy. It tends not to be. The people who are actually analyzing policy knew that the whole Obamacare idea had a hole in it a mile wide in terms of controlling costs. The Economist did a whole thing when he was running against McCain that McCain's plan controlled costs, Obama's plan increased coverage. The ideal stepping stone healthcare plan for America would involve both. And of course it didn't. And so, Obamacare had that massive vulnerability in it that Republicans have just been chipping away at ever since, which is, the individual mandate and forcing people to buy something. We don't have those issues up here. We get forced to buy car insurance. We get forced to buy a lot of things. It's we're big on the greater good up here in Canada, but, it's different in the U.S. And they knew that. They knew Obamacare was flawed policy, but it wasn't Hillary care. And that was the biggest thing it had going for it. Again, Obama was using his relatively sparse record to just, outcharm incumbents, outcharm people who had been in politics for a really long time, even someone as well regarded as John McCain. I think John McCain probably would have won a presidential election any other year but 2008 and 2012. Those years were just Obama's to win because people just liked him. People just liked him. They saw who they wanted to be as individuals, but they also saw who they wanted the country to be. And people don't vote for somebody who openly attacks the stuff they like. And this is me getting back to the idea that Trump's now repeated scapegoating of video games in times of, another mass shooting in America, is it going to hurt him? I think it will, because it may not be top of mind to people who voted for him before because they really didn't like Clinton. And now it's going to be they'll vote against him because they really don't like Trump. And they may not know why. They may not know why. It may not be a policy thing, though one could claim that his policies have been terrible. He took an economic growth period, and now the Fed's cutting rates again, which is a sign of economic headwinds. But, even if they can't say why they just don't like Trump anymore, they don't like Trump. And part of it is that he's attacking their hobby needlessly. People don't like to be attacked. And it's this petty stuff that hamstrings a candidate, that wrecks a campaign. You may think Hillary Clinton's emails were very important, but that's because, the media's CNN being the number one offender other than Fox News was on and on and on about it, but her emails. But then Romney, remember him? Ran against Obama the second time. He had a death by 1,000 cuts thing going on with stories about, ignorant things he did with his dog on family vacations and the binders full of women comment, which was just an awkward phrase, but that got wedged. And people were just, I don't like him. I don't trust him. These little things, these seemingly petty things really impact a politician. That likability thing is so crucial and so ephemeral. And so I think that, this won't be the only thing that affects Trump this time around. But it certainly is something that does. And considering it's probably going to be extremely close again, no matter how unpopular somebody is, the partisan divide in America is so strong that um, it's gonna be close. And Trump has a net negative approval rating, meaning it's not just that he has an approval rating and I think it's the low 40s the last time I checked. He has a disapproval rating of 51% regularly, meaning more people actively dislike him and are therefore motivated to vote against him than people who like him and are motivated for him. And remember that thing about voters vote on pride or they vote on anger? Well, people are going to vote if their pride is wounded from gaming being attacked. They're not going to vote for you. And if you make them angry enough by picking that scab again and again and again, these things matter to people. The things that take them away from their troubles, as I sneeze on the truth. These things that take people away from their troubles are extremely important to people in a way that they don't tend to have the ability to verbalize. But that's why these seemingly petty issues in gaming run so hot and why people are continually really aggravated by the ignorance of the media. Now, the only saving grace for Trump in this is that the left has been just as bad. I'm sure if you go back to anybody other than somebody really young, like Pete Buttigieg, who knows better, he's just grown up, he's a millennial, he grew up with video games normalized, he's not going to say something dumb like that. He says silly things about the Electoral College and things like that. But these older candidates, I mean, Biden was the one that after, I believe it was the Sandy Hook shootings, commissioned research into video games because he couldn't call for the banning, criminalization, clean up the video game industry because the Supreme Court had just ruled that video games were protected speech about a year earlier. And that's the ridiculous thing about these Republicans. The Republicans going after the video game industry. Video games, the protected speech is settled law. It was a conservative judge, Samuel Alito, that wrote the majority opinion on the subject. They're infighting on this one. A conservative, ish court, not as conservative as now, but a conservative court found video games were protected speech. So you can't go after video games, and that's why Biden was like, we need to do research. Of course, there are numerous bills, including one that's the aptly named Dickey bill, I think a Dickey amendment, that does not allow, I think it's CDC funds to go into research into gun violence and proliferation of guns and all that stuff. They're actually blocked from that funding, but they can research video games. Now, ironically, even though Biden was just pandering there, that glut of studies from like 2012 to 2015 were the things that actually closed the freaking book on whether video games cause violence, because all those studies prove they didn't. And Biden was able to sort of, woo, out of it, not wear a lot of it. But that could come up. I've seen it come up in the history of this stuff. Biden's record is a problem for him when people just are sick of politicians to begin with. They want someone that just doesn't offend them on something that kicks them in the feels. And the only way to really do that in this day and age is to have almost no record, and that's a problem with this field because there are a lot of people with very, very long records in public service. But the Democrats have to select a candidate that is most resilient on these oddly pertinent emotional issues that connect to identity. And I'm not talking about race. I'm not talking about anything like that. I'm talking about nobody wants to vote for somebody who reminds them of the person who picked on you when you were in school. And, Hillary Clinton with her Tipper Gore style nagging as First Lady reminded people of that too much for them to ever warm to her. And her campaign ran a very bad campaign, but I'm not going to talk about that now. You need somebody who seems to understand these things. If they have any anti-gaming comments in their past, they need to clean it up now, because I didn't believe people would actually vote based on a gaming identity, but people do. I heard people bring up, Clinton's opposition to the free and open distribution of video games, making it a parental choice thing. I heard people bring that up and why they weren't going to vote for her. And now Trump has his own record. And of course, Trump just comes across as such a coward that for whatever reason, people don't see him as a bully, even though he is. He whimpers so well. Like, you have to protect me. You have to protect me. I think there's a part of our brains that sees Trump as sort of the loser nerd that he is. And people kind of relate to that when he starts going on this politics of aggrievement. I think, though, that when he starts stepping in it like this, when he starts, telling, American citizens to go back where they came from, that loses one group. But then he goes after video games again. He didn't learn from the last time. That's going to cost him some votes. And it's close enough that people will remember. And this may sound nuts, but I dismissed the power of the gamer identity in voting patterns in 2016 and was wrong. My other two theories held up, but that little bit of nobody's really going to vote based on that. But I think a lot of people voted third party, because remember, Trump's victory was in part because among voters who didn't like him or Hillary Clinton, they broke for Trump by like a 2-1 margin. And that's enough to, make the difference in close states like Michigan, Wisconsin, things like that. There were a lot of other circumstances as well. He's just a lucky son of a you-know-what, but that was part of it. And it's important to deal with those factors because, sorry, my volume just took a crap there. Fixing it. There we go. Okay. It's important to consider those factors because, this time you need to get somebody who's like, well, I don't like Trump, but he's kind of a cartoon and he was on my TV for all these years and he was in Home Alone. I guess he's sort of likably unlikable. Whereas Hillary just didn't like her. They did not do enough to reintroduce her to America. And Biden's going to be subject to the same smears. All these all these things that either wound someone's pride or make them angry about Trump. Biden's got a lot of those negatives too. It's going to be a lot closer than people think if Biden's the candidate. He's gaffe prone. And he tends to be long-winded, and Trump will take advantage of both those things, even though he's just as bad. Because for Trump, it doesn't matter if he's just as bad, as long as he can make his opponent seem worse. That's how he wins. And so, as much as I'd absolutely prefer Biden over Trump, I think a Biden-Trump showdown and a Sanders-Trump showdown and all of these long-time politicians, it will be a lot closer than people think. And part of it is because if you were a politician in the 80s and 90s, going back, especially the 90s, and you were a part of that, video game moral panic thing, the way Biden was, people will remember that. People will. And what may happen is if they don't like Trump and they don't like Biden, they might just not vote. And that also hurts the down ballot races, where there are going to be a lot of close ones there too. So this is your message from America's Hat, Canada. Notice I am not telling anybody who to vote for. I am simply analyzing trends. But if you like this kind of America's Hat analysis, I'm actually thinking of starting up a podcast that's actually called, America's Hat, a Canadian view on American politics. But otherwise, if you just like this to be an aside on this channel, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K. Thanks for watching.